Thanks for joining us here. I'm meteorologist Mike Prengley in Tampa and St. Pete here, joined by Lee Southwick, meteorologist from the First Coast at WTLV and WJXX. Great to be with you, Lee.
Great to be with you. I'll say great because our impacts from Erin, not too scary except for right along the beaches. So great to be with you, but we do have some big stuff to talk about.
That's right. In fact, we've got the 11 o'clock update just in. So we take a look. I'm going to head over to the weather wall, Lee, and we'll go over the particulars here together. But 140 mile per hour winds now. So not a surprise. We were watching an eye replacement cycle taking place here this morning overnight, and now we expected it to get a little stronger today. In fact, it will likely peak as we head through this afternoon and this evening. And of course, over the weekend, we watched it as a Cat 5. Now, I would not be surprised if we get close to that again by later today. But this is the important part, why we said it's a great start to the day for us, because we're starting to see it slow down. West-northwest at 10 miles per hour. So that high pressure that's been steering it to the west, well, it's losing its grip over it. That's a sign that that big ship is about to take that turn to the north, and that's why we're here, just watching these updates as they come in, keeping everybody safe and calm. That's the key thing. In fact, the pressure, Lee, that's a sign of a strengthening hurricane down to 935 millibars, right now 110 miles to the north of Grand Turk Island. So here we go. The big thing that's really catching our attention here is this thing is doubling in its size and tripling. So before all is said and done, this could be like the size of 2 hurricanes. This is going to be a mammoth hurricane by standards that we tend to use. You know, we look at the diameter, we look at the eye very closely, but really the wind field, that's what's really sticking out here. We're seeing some hurricane force winds that could go up to over 100 miles from the center. We're watching tropical storm force winds over 200 miles from the center. So even though it's still expected to steer clear of Florida and Bermuda, it'll go between Bermuda and the United States, this thing's going to have a lot of power to it, just a lot of energy out there, Lee, that unfortunately is going to head toward the East Coast, including Florida. So how are folks there preparing based on the latest here with these numbers with Hurricane Erin?
So we're really watching our beaches. You know, we have the possibility of beach erosion, especially think A1A, St. Johns County down into Flagler County. We're worried about the road there where we've had washouts before because this is a major hurricane sending powerful waves. We will have huge breakers here along the First Coast. So for the Jacksonville area, Northeast Florida, by Wednesday, our wave heights could be 8 to 10 feet. And in Georgia, it can max out around 7 too. So massive waves on the way that we're thinking about, that we're preparing for. Also something to mention, you had talked about how big this storm will get. And so we have the tropical storm warnings, even tropical storm watches now for central Bahama because of how big this storm is. Tropical storm force winds extend out from the center of Erin by 230 miles. And with a big storm, it's growing in size and it's growing in strength. It just strengthened as of the 11 o'clock advisory. We are going to see impacts here along the beaches, even though, as you can see here, it's staying way off of our coast. We will have to watch the Carolinas, the Outer Banks, really, North Carolina. Look how that wind field kind of expands up towards the Outer Banks as well. Maybe some tropical storm force gusts possible. The hurricane itself staying offshore, but here in the Jacksonville area, we're concerned about our beaches. They're really concerned with the Outer Banks.
Right. In fact, let's take a look at North Carolina. In fact, the Outer Banks, there's some mandatory evacuations, already taking place due to that extreme energy having to go somewhere. So as we look out there, we want to thank EarthCam there for the look. And we are talking about folks having to evacuate due to water inundation. I mean, we're talking about surf. You talked about 8 to 10 foot surf towards St. Augustine Beach, Jacksonville Beach areas in the First Coast. But up this way, 15 to 20 foot breakers heading in. And unfortunately, a major event along the coast for that coastal erosion. And you know how it is in the Carolinas. You already have homes sitting right there on the edge and living on the edge. And then this is going to have some major impacts. So even though we're seeing it steer clear of the United States, unfortunately, I'm not sure folks are quite prepared for what's to come. I mean, we're talking just this massive hurricane, massive wind field like you were talking about, Lee, and unfortunately it does look like there will be some major coastal impacts, especially for the Carolinas. And we're also watching the elevated tides. We're heading toward that new moon cycle. So with that lunar cycle, we've got some spring tides involved here, and it could be a very ugly high tide as we head into the middle and into the week up, especially for the Carolinas. And of course, in Jacksonville and the Duval area, watching those tides as well. Well, you will see some elevation in some of those tides. And you can see some of the latest data just coming in, Lee. No surprises here, still Cat 4, Cat 3. And the problem is it stays a major hurricane all the way through Wednesday evening based on these latest numbers, 115 mile per hour winds off the Carolinas, and then slowly coming down to a Cat 2. But that's Cat 2 all the way into Friday into the first part of the weekend. So as we watch this very carefully here together, and we look at the tropical track history, we've been warning folks about, big storm, big hurricane, major hurricane coming our way. And this storm, if anything, it's edged a little bit farther, closer to the west, okay, if you look at all the different tracks involved. But Jessica Price was wanting this graphic. Okay, she lives in Columbia, South Carolina, so I wanted to make sure we had it in the show. She hopefully can stream us from where she's at, but you can see that latest track. And then we compared this with Hugo, and you can see with Hugo that high pressure nudged far enough to the west where it took the track inland South Carolina. So the good news again, we're very thankful that high pressure stood its ground, and it's just doing the recurve around the area of high pressure, and it did not build farther to the west. So hopefully Jessica sees that, and in this case, we are counting our blessings along the East Coast, but the problem is we don't have the all clear by any means when it comes to the rough seas, the surf, and those dangerous rip currents for sure, Lee.
Absolutely. That's why, I mean, here on the First Coast in the Jacksonville area, we have weather impact alerts in effect today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. And we might even bump that to Thursday because now through Thursday, high rip current risk. Our seas grow each and every day through Wednesday. I think that will be the peak when it comes to those breakers, perhaps even up to 10 feet in places. For everyone, it's possible to get up to at least 7-foot waves. And you mentioned the possibility of flooding. So with that onshore flow and the spring tides already higher than normal, astronomically high tides, we're going to see the possibility of minor flooding. We're talking boat ramps, campgrounds, parking lots. We could start to see some water pile up there, just minor flooding we're expecting, especially with the high tide cycles Wednesday into Thursday. And beach erosion too. It's such a powerful storm with such big waves, powerful waves, that we could start to see that beach erosion, and we'll have to watch some of our southern areas here too, St. John's and into Flagler, to see if that makes it up the dunes. And so we'll have to watch out for the beach erosion. And that is why we have weather impact alerts in effect today, tomorrow, Wednesday. And I think I'm about to kick it on into Thursday as well.
Yeah, in fact, the storm this size, the bigger the storm, that's why the size means a lot with these systems, okay? And folks just get attached to the Saffir-Simpson scale, and that's not based on the sheer size of the storm or the scope or how fast or slow it's moving. And you can see this mammoth system off northeast Florida, and really this brings back bad memories of Irma back when I was there in 2017, how the size of this thing is just a very large storm, and that's going to really create that large fetch you were talking about, Lee, that's going to bring that dangerous surf and those tides coming your way. And as we look at the latest here, a lot of folks are still on edge because of the size of the storm, and it's a Cat 4, but I can tell you the latest spaghetti models, and this is just to dispel any rumors out there. There's still a couple models out there, Lee, saying, folks are saying, oh, we have to watch it, but notice the good agreement, the consensus in the models between the Euro and the GFS still showing that nice hook out to sea. And what's going to make this system different than the others? Well, again, we're going to take a look at not just how large it is, but it's actually the first Category 5 outside the Gulf and Caribbean, really the earliest Category 5 outside the Gulf and Caribbean we've seen on record in the Atlantic Basin. So as I head over to the wall and check out this eye, it started off as a pinhole eye, but now 30 miles wide as it's starting to reorganize here and moving just off to the northeast of the Turks and Caicos Islands, where we got that tropical storm warning in effect. And of course, the southeast Bahamas, we're watching those tropical storm watches as it continues to make its jog off to the west-northwest. But that rapid intensification caught my attention over the weekend. So we were streaming live, and we went from a Category 1, 75 mile per hour winds Friday at 11 a.m. to 160 mile per hour winds. So if you look at the record books, this will be called a historical storm, Hurricane Erin, just based on how quickly it intensified. And we may need a new definition for rapid intensification. Usually for it to be called that, you need winds increasing 35 miles per hour over 24 hours, but not this time. Hey, it more than doubled that, Lee. So pretty impressive when we talk about how much energy this drew in. It went over those warm waters. Remember when it started off the coast of Africa? Yeah, kind of lukewarm waters, comparatively speaking, relatively speaking, in the 70s. But once it went over those low to mid 80 water temperatures, it really drew in all of that energy. That water's about 2 to 4 degrees above where it should be, and that's how it blew up into this big storm that we're watching right now.
And it did it so quickly, like you mentioned. And then it weakened back down into a Category 3 because of the eye wall replacement cycle. And so we were expecting it to re-strengthen, now a Cat 4. So that was not surprising. We were getting some viewer comments yesterday saying that we were likely just fear-mongering, saying it was going to strengthen again. No, you know, it did happen. We expected it to happen, though, because when we have huge hurricanes like this, they do undergo something called an eye wall replacement cycle. It restructures itself, and unfortunately, when it's done with that process, it then re-strengthens. So as the eye wall restructures, it weakens some. That's when it dropped back to the Category 3, but now we're still continuing to see it strengthen. So again, as of the 11 o'clock advisory, if you're just tuning in, it is a bit stronger. It now has winds of 140 miles an hour, but this is not surprising. We were seeing this in the forecast, and again, it is going to continue to turn to the north, and it will drop back down into a Category 3, likely by tomorrow evening.
Right, and we're here, of course, taking care of all of our friends here in Florida from coast to coast. Here on the west side of the state here in Tampa, we're getting ready for a week where we're going to start to see fewer thunderstorms, and the same goes for the first coast, and unfortunately, that can tend to fool people. I mean, we got to be very careful. So I've already made some calls to my friends and family on the first coast. I said, hey, we got to stay out of the water. I know it's going to be beautiful. You're going to have some sunny weather, and that's my fear. You're going to have folks trying to get into the water, and you're talking about the 6 to 10 foot waves there, and the life-threatening rip currents is what the Hurricane Center is saying. So you can see that flow, that big the big fetch, and then all that energy has to come somewhere, and it goes right in toward the coast here, and it's focused on the east coast of Florida and the United States. You can see as we put this in motion through Tuesday, it looks like, yeah, you may see a brief morning round of rain tomorrow, but those the breakers will really start coming up along with those dangerous rip currents, especially by tomorrow into Wednesday. And there's that nice jog that we were talking about, staying a good 600 miles east of Jacksonville Beach, and that'll be on Wednesdays it makes its pass, and then eventually heading off to the north and to the northeast. So again, we got to be careful. You know, as meteorologists, we try to keep people safe, but sometimes we have to just keep reiterating that, yeah, you may have some nice sunny weather, but stay out of the water, right?
Absolutely. You know, I do think that a lot of locals here understand that. They've been watching it closely. Plus, we know that when we go to the beach and we see an 8-foot wave, that's not normal, and we shouldn't go swimming in it. Also, just a friendly reminder to all my surfers, these are powerful waves. Please be careful. There's a lot of punch behind that wave. But I'm also concerned about vacationers. Up north, school's not back in session yet. People might be getting one last summer vacation in and not know that what the water looks like. This isn't normal. This is scary, actually. So they'll see the sunshine, they'll hit the beach, and I've been saying this all weekend, but knee deep is too deep when it comes to how intense these rip currents are and how powerful these waves are. So yes, we're going to get some drier air wrapping in. Here, Tampa, we'll have nice sunny weather, but along the Jacksonville beaches and in southeast Georgia too, it is going to seem like a nice sunny day. Please try to pass on the word to anyone you know who might be vacationing as well, that this water is dangerous. This is not normal. This is a life-threatening situation if you try to go for a swim.
Okay, good advice, Lee. And as we take a look at those wave heights, again, really starting to come up today. We've got knee high to waist high, Jack's Beach, and then coming up to probably shoulder high by later today, head high by tonight and tomorrow. And again, trying to stay out of the water. We really need to heed that warning. And of course, as we look at our friends in Bermuda, we had a couple questions for folks concerned about some family and friends toward Bermuda. Some of the latest model data does show some tropical storm force winds here with St. George, Bermuda. But again, even for the island of Bermuda, it would be the beach erosion and also those life-threatening rip currents as we look at the island nation there. Now, the big question is now, as we transition, we know about Erin, okay? Latest data is good, keeping it east of Florida and between Bermuda. But what about the next wave? Let's go to our list, Lee. We'll just take it one step at a time. So we've gotten through Erin, and of course, Erin, we now know the earliest Category 5 outside the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. Okay, and then the next name on the list is Fernan. And if you already have been checking social media, there's already rumors out there, but we don't deal in rumors, we deal in hype, we just deal with facts. And as we take a look at the very latest from the National Hurricane Center, sure enough, we've got another area that we're watching. You see a little hatched area out by Africa, and you see it's orange, so a moderate risk of development here over the next 7 days at 50-50. But keep in mind, I'm seeing a lot of differences between this and Erin. That's the first thing to pass along, Lee. What are you seeing with this tropical wave right now off the Cabo Verde Islands?
Right. Well, as you mentioned, it's a bit further south than Erin. I think there are also some similarities where we know that it's going to track to the west, and from there, so much uncertainty when it comes to this storm. So it's the same situation where we have all week to watch it, because if this became a concern, it wouldn't be until next week, really, that we would have to be really concerned about this. So we have several days to watch this. We know it's going to move to the west by midweek. And from there, where does it go? Yes, if you've seen some scary model snapshots on social media, you might see landfall here in the United States, anywhere from the Gulf Coast to the east coast of Florida. That's just one model. That's the GFS model, I'll call it out. But the European model, keeping it weaker and way out to sea. So we like that forecast a lot better. But That's the thing. These two models are disagreeing. And so there's a lot of uncertainty. We think it's going to track towards, say, the Leeward Islands. And from there, does it continue towards the Caribbean? That's more of a concern for the Gulf Coast. Does it turn to the north and almost not follow Erin, but stay out to sea like Erin did? That's also a possibility. So there's a lot of uncertainty with that next system, and something to not panic about, but something that you should check back in with us on, because we're watching it closely for you, and we will, of course, let you know if it does become a concern or not.
That's right. In fact, I was playing those models through, Lee, where you were talking about the differences. And the first thing I see is, yes, not nearly as powerful of a tropical wave heading off of Africa. And it's got a lot of obstacles it has to overcome, okay, so to speak. So the atmosphere not quite as conducive for development. In fact, as I walk to the weather wall, let's look at this wave more in detail. You can see some disorganized thunderstorms. So by this time, Erin was already in invest. This has not even reached that stage right now. Very disorganized. I see a lot of dry air around it, so I like to see that. So for those folks, I'm already getting emails about folks with cruises to the Bahamas. Don't cancel them. All right, we're not even close to that stage, because if this does develop, we have all week to watch it, and really maybe not a player until this time next week if it develops. And that's why the National Hurricane Center right now is just giving it a 50% chance of development as it moves across the Atlantic and the open Atlantic toward the Windward Islands and Leeward Islands. So in the dry air I was talking about, you guessed it, some of it related to the Saharan dust. And what we saw with Erin is Erin actually outran some of that dry air. Started kind of slower, okay, and then it actually got out ahead of it, and it basically started to really fire up, as we know. But this time around, I'm not seeing that type of trend. I'm seeing more dry air hold in longer as the system tries to develop. So very slow to come together, it looks like. So as we go through some of these models, the Euro model, which I trust the most in these situations, showing, first of all, this is Erin. Okay, this is not our tropical wave. That's heading off the coast of the United States. And then our second wave, where you see this big yellow area and this big green shading area and the orange. You can see the winds are trying to organize, but still nothing too strong. Much different than we saw with Erin as in its development and its stages of development. Okay, so this system much weaker, and it's between the Bahamas and Bermuda. And the main thing to get across is this will change, because this is not until Monday, August 25th of next week. That's why I'm telling folks, you see anything on the internet, don't believe it. You can just watch us, and we'll keep it very real here. In fact, as we take a look at the other model that some folks have been showing, it's the American or GFS model, more than 7 days out, something you can't really trust. So here's the American doing a good job in the short term, because this is a short term, okay, with our Erin moving away. And then we've got our next wave taking shape near Puerto Rico and the Bahamas, maybe not. But again, once we get to Monday of next week, really can't put much credence into this model. But the big change in the American model is it's also shown a recurve. So it does look like the same pattern that's produced one wave after another, one storm or a cyclone after another, recurving, more of an Atlantic type season so far, is holding thanks to that high pressure still basically in the same place. So what we look at as meteorologists is the steering currents, and what we're seeing is the same type of thing. We've got the big ridge of high pressure in the Atlantic, another high pressure over the Midwest, and it's taken the middle road here. So we've got what we call an escape route for these systems to head out to sea. And here's some more of that steering flow I was talking about. High pressure to the west, to the east. Here was Erin splitting the difference. Okay, finding that weakness in the high. Right now it's finding the weakness. It's slowing down, ready to take that north curve today and turn. And then as we go through next week, into this week, into next week, there it is. There's our next wave. Notice high pressure hasn't moved too much, and we got our other high pressure in the Midwest. So again, there's the weakness around the high pressure. So if something forms, and this thing has more obstacles, likely would steer, again, around the high pressure and stay to the east of the United States. But way too early to call, right, Lee? Because it's still a good week plus 7 to 10 days away. But at least we're feeling good about the steering currents.
You're absolutely right. We got to just watch the high pressure, as you said, since that's what it's going to steer it. But several days away still, though, that's why we're not panicking. You see people panicking on social media, and we're not. So we will continue to watch it very closely each and every day. It has a long trek across the Atlantic. But from there, where does it go? Likely, when does it start making its turn to the north? That's what we will have to watch closely. So we're going to keep an eye on it. And even the European really struggles to get it organized into a bigger storm too, which would be great if it stays weak, but just something that we'll be watching. And as you see here, that's where we are in hurricane season. This is not a surprise to be talking about a major Hurricane Erin and then another system coming up behind it. It's just that time of year where we see a lot of activity, especially with these warm waters. And for August, this is normal, where we see these waves coming off of Africa near the Cabo Verde Islands, and then they trek west across the Atlantic, and then they can take a couple of different paths. And what you see there, the one through the Caribbean, the one towards Florida, and the one up the East Coast, at some point, this tropical wave way out in the Atlantic right now was showing that scenario on all different types of models. But again, as Mike just explained to you, we are now seeing more of that steering current likely going to take it on a path kind of similar to Erin, where hopefully it just stays off the East Coast. But again, too early to say for sure, too early to clear us, but just know that we are watching it very closely for you.
Exactly. So if you're just joining us again, we're keeping you updated here, and we've got the very latest on Hurricane Erin. Everything on track, still a major hurricane that's now slowing down, a sign that it's finally taken that turn more to the north, okay, and then out to sea. In fact, we can take a look at something incredible, Lee. I think you'll like this, at least meteorologically, scientifically. It's actually the eye, okay? So the hurricane hunters actually flew in and got us a shot of what it looks like, what we call a stadium effect. So if we can show that, Chris, it would be cool to show the eye of the hurricane as the hurricane hunters went in. It was pretty incredible to see that pinhole eye on video, and there it is. I mean, just breathtaking, isn't it? And you see that warm sinking air in the center of the storm, your lowest pressure, the worst part of the hurricane there. You can see just incredible. Just take a look at it.
I'm always amazed by these because it's incredible to see. It's scary too, knowing what's right on the other side of that. Yeah, as the plane then flies into that outer eye wall, the worst part of the storm, you can see then the pilots being knocked around, super bumpy, super. There's so much power in that storm. We see that when we see the stadium effect with the eye, and then unfortunately as they fly through that eye wall into the worst of the storm, they start getting knocked around in that plane. But they're the experts. They are professionals at this, and we're grateful for all they do to get all that information for us, so then we can feed it into our models and have a much better idea of where these storms are going, how they're strengthening, and all that important information.
Yes, in fact, that's all the spaghetti models, all the models we use, but really they pinpoint those numbers for us. Those mathematical formulas are much more accurate when we take a look at all the models. In fact, as we come back out, taking a look at the latest tropical spaghetti models, we are talking about a system. We got about 3 minutes here, Lee, but we're talking about Erin that continues to behave, so to speak, and you can see the very latest spaghetti models. And a big shout out again to the National Hurricane Center, the hurricane hunters, as we watch Hurricane Erin continue to move off to the west-northwest at 10 miles per hour, slow down, and then take that turn to the north. So if you're just joining us, just updating the very latest information. Big concern for us, the east coast of Florida, all the way up and down the east coast. We've got Erin now, major category 4, that's expanding in size. It's, if you compare it to other hurricanes, likely 2.5 times the size of a normal hurricane. So it has a tremendous amount of energy that's now moving outward, and it's coming right toward the Florida east coast and the Carolinas. And that's why we're giving the advice. You want to stay out of that water for sure. You got that pressure down to 935 millibars. It should peak in winds today, okay, as far as the strongest wind speeds in the short term, and then we're going to start to see it slowly wind down, but it's going to take some time. This is a monster hurricane, okay? We got a category 4, still a 3 as we go into tomorrow evening, Wednesday morning, waking up well over 100 miles per hour, and that's when we're going to see most of that wave action really kick up. If you're in northeast Florida, the first coast to southeast Georgia, as we go into Wednesday, models are really showing a big potential, and in fact, Lee was talking about those 8 to 10-foot sets, and it'll be interesting to see, Lee, will they fly the 2 red flags at the beach? You think they'll probably be in the red flag type situation out there, right?
And we had a reporter out there yesterday for our evening news talking to lifeguards and talking to some of the mayors along our beach towns, and they said that they're prepared to close the beach if they need to because of this. This is a serious situation with huge waves, big breakers, the possibility of beach erosion, and of course the high rip current risk with the double red flags. It's very possible that those could be flying this week. Also, don't forget, all up and down the southeast coast, we will be watching out for the risk of minor flooding at times of high tide, especially into Wednesday and perhaps even carrying into Thursday.
Okay, so everybody be safe here as we wind down. We'll continue to keep you updated with these updates around the clock. Lee, great job as always. Always great being with you, and we're here to keep people safe. That's what it's all about, right?
Absolutely.